finally, that's it, I just gotta ask. Yeah, I'm talking about Pruitt.
Do you know there's a new version of that out?
One, no, I mean, that's
They
a
made a
classic.
new version and it's real strange. In the young age, how I guess you grew up with it.
Oh, it's a kind of a preference or something. Yeah.
In that little office back there. I like floppy disk. They're compatible.
It's actually not. I mean, the cars are moving on Friday night.
Hey Josh.
Ray, I guess we're missing Summerfest.
Yeah, I think we are. Starts on the 8th, I believe.
You could just delegate all the preparation a night or two to Josh, and you could go.
I'll give it to him. It's ongoing tonight. It's at about a week and a half. It's next Friday night. Saturday. I'll take the bit.
Sorry?
Is it being looked up directly to that?
Just get that going. Should get that bid.
All rise. This court is back in session. You may be seated.
I'll let Ms. try batteries for the mic over there. Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, good morning, everyone. We are here this morning, ready to get started, I believe. So,
recording in progress.
I would remind you that The jurors had a question yesterday afternoon before we adjourned, and I'd like to go ahead and deal with that. Let's go ahead and bring the defendant out. I guess that's what's like. All right, I would just remind everyone, the juror's question last night was, the transcript discusses the coffee table being near the double doors, page 2, lines 19 through 25. Does the detective know if Joseph indicated the lock was used on those double doors or the back door? Page 3, lines 1 through 2. The photos showed hasps on both, and it's not clear from the transcript. So, and I believe we had agreed that the lawyers would address that issue. So, all right, are we ready to recall detective? Step right up. I would remind you that you remain under oath. We ready for the jury? All right, bring the jury in. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated. Thank you. Yesterday afternoon, there was a question that was submitted to me by one of you, and I want to read it because I've talked with the lawyers, and they're going to address this issue. The question was, the transcript discusses the coffee table being near the double doors, page 2, lines 19 through 25. Does the detective know if Joseph indicated the lock was used on those double doors or the back door? Page 3, lines 1 through 2. The photos showed hasps on both, not clear from the transcript. I've spoken with both of the attorneys, and we all agree that's a legitimate question, and we're just going to let the lawyers ask the question to clarify that. Mr. Crouch. And I've reminded the detective she remains under oath.
Good morning, Detective.
Good morning.
Right out of the gate, I want to start with some discussion that has already occurred in the courtroom about a request for investigation on Gilliam Hollow Road. Now, you weren't in the courtroom when those questions were asked, but are you familiar with a call that came in from Gilliam Hollow Road with a woman complaining that some boots had been removed from her property?
I'm familiar with a woman that called from Gilliam Hollow Road, but when I responded to that address, she had not reported any boots missing.
Okay. And yesterday when former Sheriff Bledsoe was asked about Gilliam Hollow Road, he wasn't provided the specifics by the defense attorney, but I'm going to ask you some specifics because you actually went to Gilliam Hollow Road. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I want to turn your attention to the screen. Was the caller from 1221 Gilliam Hollow Road?
That's correct.
Were there multiple searches conducted at 1221 Gilliam Hollow Road?
Yes, sir. At least 2 that I know of.
All right. And Detective, are you familiar with one of our previous exhibits, which is referred to as a CAD report?
Yes.
What is a CAD report?
It's a log that our dispatchers keep of just all the events that happen within a call.
Okay. And Detective, it says that on April the 4th, 2018, at 1600 hours and 33 seconds, which I think is 4 o'clock.
That would be 4 o'clock, yes.
And 33 seconds?
Yes.
That Miss Angela Van Elstead with her phone number from 1221 Gilliam Hollow Road advised things have been moved in their barn. They have checked the property and did not find anything, but they thought they need to tell someone.
Yes.
And when that call came in from Gilliam Hollow Road, did you respond to it?
I responded after she called a second time,
Okay.
actually, just probably 20 minutes later.
And I think we have that extracted from the CAD report. On April 4th, 2018 at 1622:34, additional caller Angela Van Elstein on 1221 Gilliam Hollow called in to say there was activity in her barn overnight. Puppies were let out of their pen. A horse blanket was moved into a birthing stall, and other things have been brought to her attention wishes someone with dogs would come and maybe pick up a scent, she does have a pond on her property and again leaves her phone number.
Yes.
And what did you do?
Myself and Detective Jeff Lovell, right after this call came in, we went over to her property. We looked through her barn. We looked through all of her animal pens. We walked the back of her property, the fence line, walked around the pond. There were at least 10 to 15 other people there, including Miss Alstein. I don't know if the rest of them were family or neighbors, but it seemed like it was probably neighbors, civilians in the area. By that point, there were hundreds of people out searching. So there were quite a few people there helping us look over her entire property.
How long did you spend on the property that day?
I was there for at least an hour, probably longer.
Okay. At any point while you were there, did Miss Alstein say that boots were missing from her property?
She did not.
And what did you see in the way of any type of footprints?
She told me that she saw footprints of a child in her barn area. So I went and looked that over thoroughly, and all I could find was hoof tracks from goats.
Okay. Now, that didn't conclude the investigations at Gilliam Hollow Road, did it?
No, sir.
And if we could go to the next CAD extract. On what are we looking at, Detective?
This is from the virtual command center. So it's similar to a CAD card, but it's just recording information as it comes in. It's called the VCC.
And Detective, sometime on the following day, April 5th, someone using social media, and we're having an HDMI problem again, posted on News 5 Facebook the following message. Wish they would have brought dogs out to my farm. Someone was in my barn. Footprints were seen. My 4-year-old's boots are missing. This is new. Yes. But it was followed up with as well.
It was.
What happened a little later on 4-5?
At the top of the screen, you can see it looks like 5:05 p.m. Captain Gafford and Detective Troy Martin, they also responded out to the property, and it says they searched the premises multiple times and did not find anything, and that they found the claims that were made were unsubstantiated.
That's the second time in a 24-hour period, or roughly, that law enforcement have been to Gilliam and investigated.
Yes. All right. And then there's some additional activity the following day. Is that correct? That's correct. Let's go to that next screen, please. On April 6, 2018, at 11:24:37, Angela Van Helsting called again. A volunteer advised her that the sheriff wanted to talk to her. I guess the sheriff didn't remember that. Speak to her, sent text to sheriff, her barn was tampered with and boots stolen. Yes.
Again. And follow up to that. 4/6, 1441 hours, Van Elstead, 1221 Gilliam Hollow Road, called in and said that someone was looking for her, but she was asleep and not at the residence.
Yes.
And is there one more slide? 12/6, 1814 hours, car 2 was patched in to Angela with the complainant, and a complainant on the way, the search of her property was conducted.
Yes.
3 occasions.
Yes.
Unfounded.
Yes.
When the defense suggests or misleads by saying
Objection.
Basis for the objection?
He's saying defense is misleading. That is improper and unethical.
Judge, that is exactly what happened.
All right.
Requested by the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll step out, please.
Your Honor, it's improper for counsel to mislead and tell a jury that the other side is misleading them. It's inappropriate. General Crouch knows it's inappropriate. And I'm asking that he be instructed not to infer that counsel for the defense is misleading or lying or doing anything improper. It's just not right. He can fake it all he wants to. I mean, my opinion is state has been misleading on several witnesses, but I'm not saying that in front of the jury.
Judge, maybe I wasn't paying close attention yesterday, but Mr. Lockhart spent several minutes suggesting through Sheriff Bledsoe that no search was conducted at Gilliam Hollow Road when Mr. Lockhart and his staff have been provided these exact same CAD reports showing 3 documented searches. So it is misleading to suggest these questions through a sheriff who said he didn't recall when you know the answer, when you know the truth, that 3 searches were conducted. I mean, that is misleading. Not only that, he went from this into an improper questioning about an order the court had already put down relating to another search in Humphreys County, both misleading to the jury.
Well, I think the proper basis for the objection would be that it's argumentative. I think that it basically is that Mr. Crouch is asking a question that could be considered to be argumentative because it essentially is making the argument that Mr. Lockhart's questions to the other witnesses were misleading to the jury or attempts to mislead the jury. And I agree with Mr. Lockhart. I don't think either side should be making those kinds of statements in the presence of the jury, and I'm going to instruct them to disregard that. But the question can be, I mean, the point can be made through other means by simply asking the questions in a different form regarding whether if someone was asking that there, or someone asked a question previously about whether or not there was an investigation of Gilliam Hollow Road and elicited that there was no investigation or implied there was no investigation. Is that true? Is that accurate based on this witness's knowledge? I think that's the appropriate way to go about it. But I agree with Mr. Lockhart that we don't need to get into accusations that one side is misleading the other, because that's simply going to be, you may make the appropriate legal argument in your closing argument and save that for argument, but rather than the question, I think, is argumentative, and I'm going to sustain the objection, allow you to rephrase it, but I'm going to instruct the jury to disregard it and remind them that questions are not evidence. So, all right. Anything further, Mr. Lockhart?
Just want to state, while the jury's out, what Mr. Crouch has just argued to the court is misleading. If you recall, I asked the sheriff if they did GPS searches or dog searches. Never implied that no searches were done. 2 specific areas. So when Mr. Crouch is trying to say I was saying no searches was done, he's being misleading to the court today. But I'm not going to say that in front of the jury. But I would ask the court to instruct him not to imply in front of the jury until argument, not to say we're misleading. He can't comment on our strategy. That's inappropriate, as Your Honor knows. And in both of those regards, I would ask he be instructed not to comment on strategy or to imply that counsel is doing something improper.
Well, I think it works both ways. I think that the state should be reminded that they are not to comment on the defense strategy and that they're not to imply that the defense is attempting to mislead the jury. I think that's an appropriate instruction to counsel, but I also would point out that it would be likewise inappropriate for defense counsel to try to comment upon or imply the strategy that the prosecution is using under that same rule, and by the same token, you can both ask questions and of a witness that simply says, you know, if a witness is asked a question, or if a witness was asked a question implying that, you know, there was no thorough investigation, would that be accurate? You can ask the question, if a witness was asked whether or not there was a GPS satellite, you can follow up on that and clarify that for the jury. But I think under the circumstances, any argument about whether or not there's been an attempt to mislead the jury would have to necessarily be reserved for final argument, and all argument at the closing would have to be within the bounds of what is accepted, as we all know, in proper argument to the jury. So under those circumstances, I'm simply going to bring the jury back in and tell them that I am sustaining the objection, and that any inference of one side or the other misleading you as jurors should not be accepted by them, and that I'm going to instruct them to disregard the form of that question, and Mr. Crouch will be allowed to restate the question.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
All right, bring out the jury. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated. In your absence, I considered an objection that was made, and here's what you need to understand. Under the rules that we operate under, neither side should be asking questions that might attempt to portray the other side as somehow misleading you. The questions themselves are not evidence, if you remember that. An attorney can ask a question of a witness that is designed to show that something that was asked by the other side the day before might not be accurate, and that's completely acceptable. But characterizing the efforts by one side or the other, whether it's the defense or the state, as somehow misleading to you and what they're doing is not appropriate. So I'm asking you to, and I'm instructing you rather, to disregard the form of the question that Mr. Crouch asked, and we're going to allow him to restate that question. But I would simply remind you again, the questions themselves are not evidence, and they are important to you only in the form of the fact that they elicit a response. I sustain an objection, as I've done, to a form of a question. Just accept the fact that I've enforced a rule, and I'm going to allow them to restate the question because they have a right to try to get an answer from the witness that they think is important. The form of which they'd use, whether it's defense or state, may be governed by me, but the answer is what's important. Everybody understand that? All right. Thank you. Mr. Crouch, you may restate.
And Detective, let's just kind of rehash. Were multiple responses to Gilliam Road, did that occur?
Yes.
By law enforcement?
Yes.
So is it fair to say that her complaint that came in was received?
Yes.
And responded to?
It was.
And investigated
It was.
on multiple occasions?
Yes.
So any characterization that a search was not conducted would not be accurate?
That's correct.
Thank you. And just to be clear, when you responded on April the 4th of 2018, there was zero mention of any boots missing.
That's right.
All right, thank you. And I will move a copy of the PowerPoint as the next exhibit.
All right. If I recall, it's 106, is that correct?
105.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, 105.
Thank you. Detective, you are familiar with the interior of the residence of Mr. Daniels, the defendant.
Yes.
And you actually spoke with Mr. Daniels. You had him, the defendant, you rode with him.
Yes.
You encountered him at his residence as well.
Yes.
And there were discussions of a padlocked door. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I want to draw your attention to some photos that have previously been made an exhibit. Are we looking at a photo of the rear entrance door?
That is the rear entrance door.
Not the bedroom door, but the rear entrance door.
Correct.
And what is this?
That's a latch.
Okay. And what is this?
That's the hasp for the latch.
And what goes through the hasp and latch?
A padlock.
Padlock. So according to the defendant, padlock was used where?
On that door. On that
rear
latch.
Entry door.
Yes, sir.
Up here at the top of the door.
Yes.
That padlock, next photo, was photographed here
Yes.
on a mantle
Yes,
which is next to the rear entry door.
correct.
Okay, next photo. And the key to the padlock, is that correct?
Yes,
Also photographed on the mantle next to the rear entry door.
yes,
Next photo. And as a point of clarification, are we looking at a photograph of the master bedroom?
we are.
And the master bedroom has has a set of what going into it?
It has double doors.
Double doors. And on these double doors do you see in this photograph a doorknob?
I do.
And is there an Easter basket hanging from it?
Yes.
And what do we have up here?
It's a sliding lock.
Okay. So does a padlock go on this door?
No.
This is a slide lock.
Yes.
All right. Detective, you've been assigned to this case essentially from day one.
Yes.
There have been multiple videos collected. We have multiple body cam videos.
Yes.
There's one body cam video of Sergeant Daniel Baker that we've not viewed yet. Did you collect a copy of that?
I did.
Why are you presenting that to the court instead of Sergeant Daniel Baker?
He was killed less than 2 months after this happened.
Okay, so he's not available for testimony.
No, sir.
I'm going to present to you a copy of his body cam video. See if you can identify that, please.
This is a copy of Sergeant Baker's body cam video from that morning.
Thank you. And I'll move that as the next exhibit.
Judge, let me correct myself. You were right. First exhibit was 106. This will be 107.
And Judge, for the record, that's going to be 107.
Yes, sir.
Exhibit 107 will be played, but in an agreement with defense, it will be played with muted volume. So we will just be.
We're going to do that now.
Yes, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as you had a question the other day, or yesterday, I guess it was, about why you couldn't hear certain portions of the video. Things happen at a scene. Sometimes statements are made. People who are not going to be testifying for some reason, maybe talking on that video, and something may be said that I have determined is inadmissible. Both sides in this case have agreed that this video will be played for you so you can see what the late Sergeant Baker's video picked up, but you will not hear anything. So just understand there's a reason why everyone agrees that that would be inappropriate. All right? So we're going to play that video now. That would be 107 would be the copy of his body cam video.
Okay, Detective McCarthy, in this video, what did you observe that Sergeant Baker did near the semi-truck?
He searched through the interior of it.
Okay, and Sergeant Baker was either the first or second unit on scene that morning,
Yes.
and that was the first search conducted of the semi on the morning of April the 4th.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Detective, were you asked as part of your duties on April the 4th or 5th to begin doing a check of local sex offender residences?
I was.
Tell us about that.
My supervisor, Sergeant Trevor Daniel, asked if Jeff Lovell and I would go. We had a list of sex offenders to go check. The first house we checked, I don't remember the address, but no one was home. So we checked the entire yard area and around the house, and then went to the second location. And when we arrived there were multiple TDOC agents and I think some TBI agents there doing the same thing we were doing. So I called my supervisor and he said, yes, TDOC is going to take care of the sex offender checks. So you guys come back and we'll give you a different assignment.
Okay. So as duties began being divvied out, you were redirected?
Yes.
off the sex offender check?
Yes.
And that assignment was given to TDOC?
Yes, sir.
What does TDOC stand for?
The Department of Correction, Tennessee Department of Correction.
Okay, thank you. Were you also asked to collect surveillance videos from the neighborhood and local businesses?
I was.
And did you do so?
I did.
And did you collect a video from Bethany Retreat?
I did.
And what is Bethany Retreat?
It's a large property, and nuns spend time there. I think
Is it owned
for
by the
vacations.
Catholic Church?
Yes.
Okay, so a retreat type property?
Yes.
And what type of video is collected from Bethany Retreat?
It's a surveillance video that's out at the road at their gate, and it's pointing directly at Garners Creek Road.
Okay. I'm going to move a copy of the Bethany Retreat video as the next exhibit. Is that 108?
108.
Detective, did you also collect a copy of surveillance video from an address on Pruitt Springs Road?
That video was collected as well, yes.
Okay. And we'll get more into that video in a second, but do you know the owner of the property at Pruitt Springs?
Yes, his name is Mr. Tim McElhaney.
Okay. And about how far is the Pruitt Springs residence and video from the Daniel residence?
It's about 375 yards.
And I'll move a copy of the Pruitt Springs video as Exhibit 109.
All right.
Detective, did you collect some video from what I call a light bulb factory on McElhaney Road?
That video was collected, yes.
And I'm not sure the name of the business, but do they produce light bulbs?
They don't produce them, they distribute
They
them.
distribute them.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not a light bulb manufacturer, it's a
Right.
distributor.
Yes.
And you collected that video.
Yes.
I'll move that as Exhibit 110. Detective, did you collect video from Love's Truck Stop?
That video was collected as well.
And where is Love's Truck Stop?
That truck stop is on Highway 48 South. It's approximately 9 miles south of the Daniels residence.
Okay. And I will move a copy of the Love's Truck Stop video. 111.
111.
As Exhibit 111. And finally, Detective, did you collect video from the Dollar General store on Highway 70?
Yes, I did.
Excuse me. And how far is the Dollar General store on Highway 70 where you collected video from the Daniels residence?
That's not very far at all from their house, less than half a mile.
Okay. And I'll move that as Exhibit 112. Okay, Detective, can you identify this map?
Yes, I can. That's going to be a map of the area of Tennessee City, Highway 48 South, and in the area of the Daniels residence.
Okay.
Zoomed out quite a bit.
So why is it zoomed out quite a bit?
So we can see where video was collected.
All right. And from the distance from Love's truck stop up to 1108 Garner's Creek and 1112 Garner's Creek
Yes.
is about how far?
I think it's about 9 miles.
Okay. And 1112 is the residence of who?
That is the residence of the Daniels family.
Okay. And the defendant?
Yes.
Right. And although, do we see Pruitt Springs camera with the thumbtack on there?
You can.
And,
Yes.
and your testimony is the camera on Pruitt Springs is 300 and something yards?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Your Honor, I'm going to distribute a copy of this map to the jury for them to follow along with as we talk about video. Copy for the court as well. Okay, Detective, let's first talk about, because I kind of want to do this in chronological order from April of 2018. Let's talk about video surveillance of the defendant on April the 3rd of 2018. Did you find some video with the defendant depicted?
I did.
And where was that found?
That video is going to be at the Dollar General store that you see near their house.
Okay. So if the jury is following along with their map, are they going to be looking at Dollar General thumbtack?
Yes.
That's where this video is collected?
Yes.
All right, and on the screen, do we have a copy of this Dollar General video? Is that what you see?
That is the video from there.
Before we play it, I'm going to move a copy of the exhibit of the Dollar General video, please. 113.
Yes, sir.
But we already had made that 112, copy of the Dollar General video. Is this a different one?
Sir?
I thought you had.
So, Judge, we moved the entire video, days worth, as an exhibit, and this next exhibit is just a clip from that, so we don't have to watch all of it. Okay, Detective, what's depicted on the screen?
That's the interior of the dollar store. That's Crystal Daniels, and that is Joseph Daniels, the defendant.
All right, and we have it paused. You see the defendant?
I do.
And approximately what time is this and what date is this?
This is going to be on April the 3rd. The approximate time is 1:50 in the afternoon.
1:50 in the afternoon. And can you describe the type of shirt he's wearing?
He's wearing a black t-shirt with a green alien on it.
All right, thank you. Go ahead. And Detective, can you identify this photograph?
That is a picture that I took of the screen inside the store. They could not print me a physical receipt, so they pulled up the defendant's receipt for me, and I took a picture of it, and it has the time on there and the date, April the 3rd, 13:48 hours, which is 1:48 p.m.
And is the photograph I just handed you the same photograph we see on the screen?
It is.
And again, what was that date and time?
It's April the 3rd, 2018. The time is 13:48 and 38 seconds.
Which is 1:48 p.m.?
Yes, sir.
I'll move that as the next exhibit, 114. You have recovered video footage from Pruitt Springs Road.
Yes.
And you've already testified that video is going to be from quite a distance away.
Yes.
About how many yards?
About 375 yards.
Okay. So is watching this video somewhat difficult if you don't have a good perspective and vantage point?
It's quite difficult.
All right. So in order to get a better idea of what you're seeing, did you prepare a diagram of the field of view from the Pruitt Springs video?
I did.
All right, and can we see a copy of that, please? What do we see on the screen?
In the bottom right-hand corner, that's where the surveillance camera is located. And it's looking out towards the Daniels residence, which is circled. The red lines, that's approximately where the field of view cuts off. So basically, from that Pruitt Springs camera, you can see everything inside that field of view, although it's far away.
Okay, so Detective, what do we have here?
That's the Pruitt Springs surveillance camera.
All right, and this is a home residence.
It is.
And the field of view is depicted by these two red lines?
Yes, sir.
So this would be the right width, and this would be the left?
Yes.
Left. And the yellow circle is the defendant's residence?
It is.
All right, and that's 1112 Garner Street Road?
Yes.
And is this driveway leading to 1108
Yes.
Garner Street Road?
Yes.
And is that the residence of Mr. Matthew Ledford?
That is the driveway of Mr. Matt Ledford. At the time this Google image was made, the tiny home was not there on the property like it is now, but that is his driveway.
And I will move a copy of this depiction as the next exhibit. And I also have copies prepared for the jurors to use as we watch some Pruitt Springs video. If I could have those distributed, please. Okay, Detective, just so we can all kind of be on the same page, this is simply a reference to help ourselves get oriented with what we're going to see on the video.
Yes.
All right. And did you take a clip of different clips of video from the Pruitt Springs video camera?
Yes.
All right. Now, a couple of questions before we watch the video. You've reviewed all of the Pruitt Springs video from April 3rd through April when?
Through the morning of April 4th up until about 7 a.m.
Okay. And in your observations, did you observe a vehicle enter the residence of 1108 Garners Creek Road on the night of April 3rd?
I did.
And about what time was that?
That was at 10:06 p.m.
All right, 10:06 p.m. A vehicle enters where?
The driveway of 1108 Garners Creek Road, which is Mr. Ledford's residence.
All right, and on this video, you're going to see a car enter this driveway?
Yes,
And that's the home of Mr. Matthew Ledford?
it is.
All right. This time I'm going to move a clip of a car entering the driveway at 1108 Garners Creek Road as the next exhibit. I'm going to step back before we play it. Screen playing. Let's play it. Okay, Detective, I'm going to ask you to identify what we see here.
That's Mr. Ledford's vehicle.
Okay? He's on Garners Creek Road?
He is
Northbound direction?
northbound. He's slowing down there as he approaches his driveway.
We're looking in this area now?
Yes.
Are these his headlights not facing?
It is.
driving into his driveway?
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's kind of hard to see.
It is difficult
And why is that?
because it's so far away. And actually, if you'll notice this video clip in the top left-hand corner
Yes.
is the actual surveillance video, the whole view. We have to zoom in to this side, to this corner, to be able to really see what we're looking at. So it's even more difficult to see if you can't zoom in. So this is a zoomed-in view, and it's still difficult.
Okay. And this is the camera that's over 300 yards away.
Yes, sir.
And looking at the field of view reference map that the jury has, they can see that what we're watching begins on the left field of view, goes to the right field of view.
Yes.
And at the bottom right is where we see Mr. Ledford turn left into his driveway.
Yes, it will be the driveway just to the right of the Daniels driveway.
And in the field of view map, you actually have the far right line intersects with Mr. Ledford's driveway.
It does. It cuts off that little bit of his driveway.
Okay. Now, did you see, in review of the video, did you see a vehicle leave Mr. Ledford's driveway anytime after 10:06 p.m., which we just saw on 4/3/2018, through 9 a.m. on April the 4th of 2018?
No.
And you reviewed this video?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Detective, did you also collect video? Well, we know you did because it's an exhibit, but from Love's gas station?
Yes.
And let me back up just a little bit. You testified yesterday that you had a brief interaction with a man named Daniel McCormick.
Yes,
And from that interaction, did you actually see him?
I did.
Okay. And when you learned that he had described seeing someone on Garners Creek Road, did you try to obtain video of Mr. McCormick at Love's?
Yes,
And did you do so?
we found that. Yes.
Okay. And did you recognize Mr. McCormick in Love's?
Yes,
From the video?
I did.
And I'll move a copy of that clip as the next exhibit.
117. Correct, 117.
Yes, sir.
And I would again direct your attention to the screen. And is this Mr. McCormick making a purchase at Love's gas station?
It is.
And approximately what time does this purchase occur?
I think that is 10:21 p.m.
10:21 p.m. or 12:28 a.m.?
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong time there.
That's a double zero.
Yes, it's 12:28 a.m.
So midnight 28
Yes,
on the morning of April 4th.
yes.
And he makes a purchase of what?
A case of Dr. Peppers.
And a cup of
Looks like a cup of fruit.
or donuts?
Yes.
Fruit? Or
Us.
donuts?
Yeah, I can see now that could be fruit or donuts.
Okay. This clip is extracted from the overall video of Love's truck stop.
It is.
And he makes his purchase at midnight, 28 minutes and 52 seconds.
Yes.
And that's midnight, April 4th, 2018.
Yes.
And you've already testified that the Love's truck stop is approximately 9 miles from the Daniels residence. Is
Yes.
that correct? All right. Now, do you have, going back to the Pruitt Springs video in the field of view, do you have what you believe to be a video of Mr. McCormick passing in the Pruitt Springs video?
I do.
All right. I'll move a copy of that clip of Pruitt Springs video as the next exhibit. Now, Detective, if I could turn your attention to the screen again. And again, we're back to the Pruitt Springs video, correct?
Yes.
If we can play that. Okay, detective, in this clip, how many cars did we see pass?
2 vehicles.
And it is your belief, based on the investigation, that one of these two is Mr. McCormick?
Yes.
And why do you believe that one of these two vehicles is Mr. McCormick?
That's going to be based on the time frame. He was in the Love's truck stop at midnight 28. This time is actually midnight 42 and 43. And then there's not another vehicle that comes from the south headed north until after 1:40 in the morning. So based on that, I believe one of these 2 vehicles has to be Mr. McCormick.
And detective, before we go any further, let's clarify exactly what we're seeing on the timestamp from Pruitt Springs.
Yes.
We have April 4th, 2018, which is correct.
Yes.
Is this correct? 000924.
The timestamp is not correct.
And the timestamp is what? Is it slow or fast?
It is slow by 34 minutes.
Okay, so the correct time would be 09 plus 34,
Yes.
which puts us to 12:42 when the first car passes and 12:43 when the second car passes.
Yes.
And how do you know that 34 minutes is exactly time?
I was able to tell the time frame, the time that it was off, based on when patrol deputies arrived the morning of the 4th, knowing what time they arrive and comparing it to that time. Also with the bus video, the stamp on the bus video, and comparing it to this video, we're able to see that the timestamp is 34 minutes slow.
So you had to essentially reconcile multiple cameras and viewpoints to analyze that this video is 34 minutes off.
Yes.
It's 34 minutes slow.
Yes.
And we have 2 cars passing, one at 12:42 a.m. and one at 12:43.
Yes.
And it's your testimony, based on your investigation, that one of those 2 is Mr. McCormick.
Yes.
Okay. Did I make that an exhibit already?
The video,
Yes.
the last one you made was Mr. McCormick on Garner's Creek from the Pruitt Springs.
That's it. Okay. The clip we just saw, 12:42 a.m., 12:43, 2 cars passing. Did either of those 2 cars turn into any driveway that you could see?
Not that I can see on this video.
And those cars are traveling, if we're looking at the map the jury has, from south to north.
Yes.
And
Left to right.
if you can go back to the map from Dennis. So Mr. McCormick made a purchase here at Love's Truck Stop,
Yes.
and that was at 12:28 a.m.
Yes.
And he traveled on Garner's Creek
Yes.
north,
He did.
and he passes Pruitt Springs video, which we can see at approximately 12:42 or 12:43 a.m.
Yes.
And that is approximately a 15-minute drive.
Yes.
Now I want to talk about the morning of 4/4 and the Pruitt Springs video. Were you able to extract a clip of video depicting the defendant leaving his residence on the morning of 4/4?
I was.
And this is on Pruitt Springs again.
Yes.
If we could bring that video up, please. All right, so the conditions, again, this is 300 and something yards away.
Yes.
All right, and for this demonstration, I would like for you to actually come over and show the jury what we're going to be looking for. And before I do that, I would move a copy of this video clip as the next exhibit.
129.
Be taller than me.
And this daylight has started to break, so it looks a little bit different. But the Daniels residence is in this area, and you're going to be looking for lights in this area. And this is when he drives around his trailer, causing those tire tracks around his house.
Okay, and detective, before we watch the clip, we see on the screen the time is 5:40:59, but the correct time is 6:15
Yes.
a.m.
It will be when we start to see the lights. 1 minute will pass, and it'll be at 6:15 a.m.
All right, let's play the video. driveway
It's in my front yard.
in the front yard.
Now he's on the driveway.
Okay.
And going out towards Garner's Creek Road.
And this sounds like a silly question, but can you see who's in the car?
No.
Could anybody see who's in the car from this vantage?
No. And that would be traveling southbound on Garner's Creek Road.
And detective, is this video occurring with seeing this car leave this residence before the 911 call was made?
Yes.
And at approximately 6:15 a.m.
Yes.
All right, detective, that's a little difficult to see, but you were able to see headlights coming down the driveway and then more easily to see when he's on Garner's Creek headed south, is that right?
Yes.
Were you able to extract a copy of video from when the defendant returns back to his residence in a few moments later?
Yes.
And again, I'm going to ask you to come over to the screen
Sure.
and demonstrate for us because it's even more difficult to see.
This one is hard.
And this is a clip of the defendant returning after making the 911 call. Is that correct?
Ackerman, it's in that same time frame.
Okay.
But I think he has made the call, we can tell based on the time.
Move that as the next exhibit.
120. It's very close to the same time as the 911
Sure.
phone call. And you're really not going to be able to see much because he's driving from this direction towards the driveway and pulling into the driveway. So you're just going to see some movement in the area of the driveway, and that's his car, what I believe his car pulling back into the residence. Right there.
And can you point to the screen where you believe the car is?
Saw the movement right here, and you're going to see more of it in this area through the trees.
And we see it again?
Yes.
A brief flash of light?
Yes.
Okay, and I'd like for us to play it one more time, just so you can again point out for the jury exactly where we see the lights. Because, detective, how many hours have you spent reviewing these videos?
Probably close to 24 solid.
And it is difficult to see.
Yes.
All right, let's watch it one more time.
Right there, you just saw the light. Movement right there and light.
And is that the defendant's car going back up the driveway?
Yes, leading to the house, which is kind of right behind that third house you can use as a reference.
Okay, thank you. Now, so far from the Pruitt Springs video, we've seen Mr. Ledford, as you pointed out, arriving home at 10:06 p.m. on April the 3rd, 2018.
Yes.
We've seen what we believe is Mr. McCormick passing in front of the Daniels residence on April the 4th at approximately 12:42 or 12:43 a.m.
Yes.
We have seen the defendant leave his residence at 6:15 a.m.
Yes.
on April 4th, and then again return at approximately 6:25.
Yes.
At any point in any of the Pruitt Springs video, did you ever see a vehicle leave Mr. Ledford's driveway after he arrives home the night before?
No.
And that's going all the way through 9 o'clock a.m. on April the 4th.
Yes.
And have you seen video where the arriving first responders are actually blocking Mr. Ledford's driveway?
I have.
And Mr. Ledford's car is still in the driveway?
It is.
Okay. Now, you've also testified that video was collected from Bethany's Retreat.
Yes.
And I want to go back to the map with the thumbtacks. The jury has in their hand a map with thumbtacks where you collected video. Did you collect video from Bethany Retreat?
Yes.
Now, that's roughly halfway between the defendant's residence and Love's truck stop.
Yes.
Roughly.
Yeah.
And on this video, you've reviewed it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find a clip of the defendant driving south on the morning of April 4th?
Yes.
Okay, and about what time was that?
I think that's either around 6:50 or 7:50 in the morning. It's hard to keep all of these times in my head.
Do you think that the camera on the Bethany Retreat video is close to accurate?
That time is accurate.
All right, and if it says 7:52 a.m., would that be accurate?
That's accurate, yes.
All right, and if we could pull up a clip of the Bethany Retreat video, and I'm going to move that as the next exhibit.
121.
Play. Okay, Detective, what did we see?
The defendant's vehicle driving southbound past that camera.
So that would be, in reference on the map, that would be southbound from his residence toward the Love's truck stop.
Yes.
And the time on the Bethany Retreat camera is what?
7:51 a.m.
All right, on the morning of when?
April the 4th, 2018.
Thank you. Judge, if I could have just 1 second. Pass the witness.
Mr. Mitchell?
Good morning.
Good morning.
On the day of April the 4th, what time did you arrive on the scene?
I believe it was 9:08 a.m.
9:08. And yesterday you testified Mr. Daniels was not there yet.
He was not.
When did he arrive?
9:19 a.m.
9:19 a.m.
Yes.
After he got back there to the house, his car stays out in front of the house, right?
Yes.
Who told him to stay in his home?
I'm not sure.
But he was asked to stay in the home, right?
If he was, I didn't hear that. I don't know.
Search parties were set up. People were interviewing him. The family was in the house.
Yes.
Okay. Yesterday, when discussing this, you talked about Mr. Daniels asking someone to check his trunk.
Yes.
What time of day was that?
I think that was around noon that day.
So about 12 to 12:30.
I think so.
So 3 hours after he got back to the house.
Yes.
When you arrived on the scene, were you there in an investigative capacity?
Yes.
Were you investigating the home for a possible crime?
You know, that's part of something that is in the back of your mind, but really it was to find a missing child. But you're always going to have those types of thoughts in the back of your mind. Every time I go to a call like that, I think, you know, the worst could be possible. But when we respond to a call of a missing child, it's always our goal is to find that missing child alive.
I mean, that's your job, right?
Yes.
I mean, your job is to investigate.
Yes.
I mean, look at all possibilities.
Yes.
So is it fair to say that at 9:08 you started investigating this?
Yes.
All right. When did y'all decide that you were going to interrogate Mr. Daniels?
I don't know when that decision was made. I wasn't.
I'm saying when you asked him to get in the car and drive him around.
We definitely didn't interrogate him, but we decided around, I think that was 1 p.m. that day.
Around 1 p.m. you decided to backtrack where he'd been.
Yes.
Is that helping looking for the kid?
Yes.
To go back and look at places he's already searched?
Yes.
Did Mr. Daniels know you were recording him?
Probably not.
Did you tell him you were going to record him?
Probably not.
Do the jurors y'all still have the transcripts? Just want to make sure. Page 3 of the transcript from yesterday. Mr. Daniels said that he went down Garner Creek Road to where it meets Harris Road.
Can you tell me what
That would
line?
be
you're
line
on?
14 to 15.
Yes, sir. Read line 14 to 15.
Yes.
Wade?
You can start the sentence on 13.
Okay. So what I did, I went all the way down to the end of this road, Garner's Creek Road, where it meets Harris Road.
Now, the jurors have been given a map. Do you have that map still?
I don't have that map.
Where's Harris Road?
Harris Road, if you go all the way south, Garner's Creek Road, it will run into Harris Road.
And it takes a left
Harris Road goes to the left, yes.
and turns out at Love's Truck Stop.
Yes.
How fast do you think did he say he was going? It's on that page. Did he talk about what he was doing?
I remember him saying that he was driving slowly through the area.
And you, just a few minutes ago, reviewed the Bethany Creek,
Yes.
or Bethany Retreat.
Yes.
How fast do you think he was going?
He looked like he was going pretty slow.
Think he was looking on both sides of the road?
He was driving slowly.
Okay. So at that point, he's come back to the house. You're actually in the house taking photos.
I'm in the house. Detective Troy Martin is taking the pictures. Hold on one second. When Mr. Daniels gets back to the house, no, at that point pictures are not being taken. That was just a little bit after he got back to the house that Detective Troy Martin got there and started taking pictures. But I was in the house.
What time period are those photos being taken?
I think they're around 10 a.m.
Around 10 a.m.
Yes.
So how long do you think you were in that house?
From my initial response till the first time I left the house,
Yes.
probably 2 hours.
Did you see any blood?
I did not.
Did you see anything broken? I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff around that
I-
house, but
I did see lots of holes in the walls. I can't tell you if anything else was broken in the house. I don't remember seeing anything else broken necessarily.
okay. And you saw a set of clothes on the coffee table.
Yes.
Have you reviewed the chest cam of the first responders?
Yes.
Did you see when they entered the home that there were 2 sets of clothes on the coffee table?
That's what it looks like.
You saw the house. You've seen the hasp or the lock at the top. Why is that there?
That is there to prevent Joe Clyde from getting out of the house.
And there's a china hutch on the front door.
Yes.
Why is that there?
For the same reason, so Joe Clyde couldn't get out of the house.
As a detective, would that indicate that Joe Clyde gets out of the house?
It would seem that way, yes.
So they're taking precautions to stop him from getting out.
Yes.
You talked to Mr. Daniels yesterday. We heard it yesterday. But you talked to him, and if you want to turn to page 5. At the very top there, you ask him if it's possible that Joe Clyde would have unlocked the lock.
Yes.
What is his response?
He says, that's a good question because there's some things that he's been doing recently, like he's been progressing and doing things better. So it's a really good question if he did or not. I know recently he's been getting better at doing things. He's progressing, but he hasn't really, I haven't seen him unlock the door.
So he's not saying that it's not a possibility that the door was left unlocked.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Does that leave it open for there to be a possibility the door was left unlocked?
I don't think so, because he said multiple times that the lock was checked, definitely checked, and that it was locked.
Did he say that he knew he could unlock it?
No, he did not.
Did he say that it's a good question because he doesn't know if he could unlock it?
He did say that.
When you were in the house, who noticed that all of Joe Clyde's shoes were still there?
I don't remember.
Were you aware of that?
I was aware of that at some point during that day, but I couldn't tell you when.
If you'll turn to page 27 of the transcripts. Line 4, what does that say?
The only thing is that all the shoes are in the house, so he wouldn't have had a pair of shoes on.
So, is it fair to say that before y'all left in the car to question Mr. Daniels, that you knew? Would you have talked about that with the other people in the house?
Which people?
Mr. Daniels, Mrs. Daniels, Aunt Joyce?
It's possible.
Because yesterday, if you'll turn to page 19, the question came up. I believe the general asked you to read line 14.
Okay.
You may want to start all the way back at line 8.
Line 8. Me, are they long sleeves and long pants? Joe Daniels, yes. Me, socks or no socks? Joe Daniels, no socks. Me, and no shoes. Joe Daniels, no shoes, no socks.
And you were asked, how does he know no socks and no shoes?
That on the phone in front of him later in the car ride, right?
Later in the car ride.
Later in the car ride, I mentioned that all of the shoes were in the house. So I still don't know.
But someone knows that all the shoes are in the house.
Someone does, yes. Someone told me that Or I told someone that on the phone, so yes.
Yes.
Someone
You
knows.
told someone on
Yes,
the phone.
I told someone on the phone, yes.
So
So I know and someone knows.
So before you get in the car, y'all know that all the shoes are there.
It appears that way.
And before the line before that, you tell him he doesn't have shoes, right? On line 13,
Back on page
back on page 19.
19, and no shoes. I believe that my intent of that was more of a question rather than a statement.
So you begin by asking him about the pajamas, and then you ask him if he had on socks, right?
Yes,
And when he says he had on no socks, you say, and no shoes.
yes.
So how does he know that he doesn't have on socks and shoes?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Let's go to page 17, line 13. If you don't mind, just read that line 13 through page 18, line 2.
Okay. Can you think of a different direction we should be driving, though? Joe Daniels says that there's an area that's back where there's a dirt road on my road. I would go left or go on through it or 3rd Street. I think it's where Pruitt ends and then turns to 3rd Street. And you take a left right there and go all the way down to the end of the road. Then take a left on that road and eventually you'll end up on a dirt road, detective level. We'll go there when we go back and we'll go check that out. Has he gone there before? Joe Daniels, I have. He has not actually.
All right. Yesterday, our attention was brought to, I believe it's page 31. And you were asked to read line 11. Why don't you go ahead and read that one again?
Joe Daniels, there's a chance that he could be curious. I don't remember taking him out here this far.
Out of context, that could sound bad, but why don't we move back and put some context into it? Start at line 4.
Is there a specific location we're going to now on here? Like, is there another dirt road or is it Joe Daniels? There is a dirt road out here, just detective level. Would he be curious to look at anything? Joe Daniels, there's a chance that he could be curious. I don't remember taking him out here this far.
Could that be interpreted as Mr. Daniels saying he's a curious child, but he wouldn't know that anything's out here?
Can you repeat your question?
Could Mr. Daniels' statement be he is a curious child, and he says, I don't remember taking him out this far, as in, how would he know to be curious about something out here?
I really don't know what he meant by it.
Okay. So Detective Lovell asked him, would he be curious to look at anything?
Yes.
As in, is there something out here he would know to come look for?
Okay.
And then Mr. Daniels responds with, there's a chance he could be curious, but I don't remember taking him out this far.
I suppose it could be interpreted in different ways. I don't know what he means by it.
Okay. Let's go to page 26. Starting at the top at line 1.
just read.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Just line
sorry.
1 through 4.
I'm sorry. Joe Daniels. I know when I got woke up in the middle of the night that he had peed on the floor, but I didn't spank him, inaudible him, scream at him or anything. I just went back to bed.
Now, if that was completely unprompted, that seems like an odd thing to say, doesn't it?
Yes.
Why don't you go back a page to 25, line 10, and start there.
Detective McCartney, is there something that you're wanting to tell us? An accident? Joe Daniels, nothing happened that I know of. No one screamed at him. No one yelled at him. Nobody did anything to him. You know, just let him go to sleep as normal. Detective Lovell, where did he sleep at? Joe Daniels, inaudible. In Nanny's bed with Alex. They sleep with each other. Detective Lovell, so Alex was the only person in the bed with him? Joe Daniels, yeah, Alex was the only one that was in bed with him. Detective McCartney, is it possible that there was some kind of accident that you don't want us to know about? Joe Daniels, I know when I got woke up in the middle of the night that he had peed on the floor, but I didn't spank him, inaudible him, scream at him or anything. I just went back to bed.
How were y'all arranged in this truck?
Detective Jeff Lovell was driving. He was in the driver's seat. Mr. Daniels was in the front passenger seat. I was in the back seat, in the middle back seat.
Was Mr. Daniels able to see you?
If he turned around, but just facing forward in the truck, no, probably not.
You're questioning him throughout this, right? Let's go back to page 25, line 3.
Read line 3 and 4.
3 and 4.
Detective McCartney, if there's something that you know that we don't know, inaudible.
So you're trying to get him to tell you that something happened.
If something did happen, I wanted to know.
And he says, I don't know. I don't know where he's at. I really don't. And you say, is there something that you're wanting to tell us, an accident?
Yes,
And he denies it.
he did.
So you're asking him to tell you what could have happened. Is it that odd that he responds by telling you the things that would seem suspicious that didn't happen?
I don't guess so.
I mean, he tells you nobody hit him, nobody yelled at him, nobody spanked him, no one screamed at him. But when you just read page 26, line 1 out of context, it sounds like he's trying to preemptively make something up.
Okay.
The interview ends with Mr. McCormick.
Yes.
Well, actually, let's go ahead and go to that back page.
Okay.
Ignoring the profanities, on page 41, line 4 through 10, is this Detective Lovell saying that y'all have been authorized to investigate this by the sheriff?
I don't know. Part of it says inaudible, and I don't remember what it said. Y'all can come on by. Inaudible, sheriff said we can talk to inaudible. I'm not sure what that is.
Okay. But he does say that y'all are going to start doing a forensic interview of the children.
We probably need to get a forensic interview done on Alex. Yes.
So you are investigating this further?
Yes.
Okay. So this yesterday when you said, we're just trying to find a child, this isn't investigation, this has been investigation since 9/15.
Part of finding a child that's missing is always going to involve an investigation. You can't find a missing person if you don't investigate.
Okay. So let's talk about Mr. McCormick.
Okay.
Did you interview Mr. McCormick?
Very briefly that morning on the side of the road.
What did he tell you happened?
I honestly can't remember our conversation exactly. I know that I wrote in my supplement report that Mr. McCormick said that he was coming home from work the night before and saw a child in skeleton pajamas on the side of the road near the Daniels residence.
He tell you where?
I think it just says near the Daniels residence, and like I said, I can't remember what he said exactly to me that morning. That's reviewing my police report. I
Okay.
think it said it might have been across the street from their home.
All right. You just talked about Matthew Ledford. Do you recall interviewing him on the 4th,
No,
the 5th,
no,
6th?
no.
When did you interview him?
I interviewed Mr. Matthew Ledford in the spring of 2020, I believe it was.
And for context, how long had it been since?
That would be 2 years.
2 years. Why did you interview him?
We went to interview Mr. Matthew Ledford because we had started to understand that Pruitt Springs video that we were watching, and we really started to understand what we were looking at in that video, because as you can see, it's really difficult to tell what you're looking at. So when we really started putting that video together and investigating what we were seeing on that video, we noticed something in the video that looked a little bit off, and it caused us to have some questions of Mr. Matt Ledford, who lives right there at 1108 Garners Creek Road.
At the time, did you tell Mr. Ledford you saw him pull in at 10 o'clock?
I don't remember.
Did you ask him if someone else could have pulled in at 10 o'clock?
I asked him if someone else could have pulled into his driveway besides him, like an additional person.
Did you ask him about someone leaving in the early morning hours?
I think I asked him if anyone could have left, if anybody could have came and left from his residence.
Do you know about what time that the video would have showed someone possibly leaving his residence?
I asked him if anything would have happened around 5 a.m.
Is that because of your study of the videos?
It's because of something strange that I saw in the video at around 5 a.m., yes.
Okay. And did he say he left at 5 a.m.?
He said he did not.
Did he say there was someone there that night?
He said there was not.
Did you review the footage from Love's truck stop to see when Mr. Ledford actually came back that night on the 3rd?
Can you repeat your question?
Did you see Mr. Ledford at all in the Love's truck stop videos?
No.
Okay. You talked about sex offenders. Why?
That's just kind of the protocol if there's a missing child and we don't find them immediately like we do a lot of times. That's just a next step in the process. You're going to start looking at things like that.
How many sex offenders were in the area?
I believe there were 6 that were in a certain radius that were close, 5 or 6.
What's the radius?
I don't remember what the radius was. I didn't do that work up on that report of the sex offender list.
How far out would you normally look on the first day?
For a child that wanders off and it's cold outside and they're 5 years old and reported to be autistic, I can't give you an exact number, but we would probably stay pretty close to the house, probably within a mile radius, which is a lot of ground to cover. But I would think we would probably start somewhere in that type of radius.
Around the house itself, how many people do you think were searching at 8 or 9 in the morning?
8 or 9 in the morning, searching just right around the house. Mm-hmm. That's hard for me to estimate. There were quite a few people there at that time.
So if we'll go back to page 3 of the transcripts, You can start at the second sentence that begins on on line 10.
On line 10. And then I called the police, and that's when they came out. And while they were out, I searched this area a little bit more and still couldn't find him. So what I did, I went all the way down to the end of this road, Garners Creek Road, where it meets Harris Road.
Now, in the video, you can see Mr. Daniels at about 6:15 driving around looking for him.
That specific video at 6:15 in the morning, that's where you see him pull around his house and down his driveway and onto Garners Creek Road. And yes, he is driving slowly down Garners Creek Road.
And then at 7:50, 2 hours later, you can see him at Bethany Retreat.
That's the camera where you could see his car clearly driving by slow. Yes.
And so says the police were there, people were searching around, so I got in my car and decided to go out further.
Yes, that is what he said.
Okay. You have just a moment, Your Honor. You reviewed the video from Pruitt Springs.
Yes, sir.
Before 6:15, did any vehicle leave the Daniels residence?
No.
Redirect.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Detective, let's talk a little bit more about Pruitt Springs video. And as we all know, it's hard to watch, but I do want to direct your attention to the screen. And if we could dim the lights. Mr. Mitchell asked you about interviewing Matthew Ledford, who resided next door.
Yes.
Is that correct? Do you know how long Mr. Ledford had lived in the tiny house on the property next to the Daniels prior to April the 4th, 2018?
Apparently, April the 3rd, 2018 was his first night actually staying in.
You testified previously that we observed him pulling into his driveway at 10:06 p.m.
Yes.
and that he did not leave prior to 9 a.m. on April 4th.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Mitchell asked you some questions about something odd that you observed in the Pruitt Springs video, which made you want to go question Mr. Ledford.
Yes.
And what did you see in the video that made you want to ask Mr. Ledford some questions?
There are some lights in the video in the bottom right-hand corner, which would be near where his driveway comes out to Garners Creek Road. And the lights are strange.
Okay. And I direct your attention to the screen, and I'm going to move a copy of this clip of video as the next exhibit, please. And Detective, again, we're looking at April the 4th, 2018.
Yes.
The camera time says 5:07 a.m., so we would have to add 34 minutes to that.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And stuff sticks. Anyway, here we go. Detective, show me before we start the video where I should be pointing to see what, in your investigation, you wanted to follow up on.
The bottom right side of the screen, where in that area, yes,
Okay?
right there.
Let's play the video. That's a vehicle.
Yes, that vehicle is not related to what I saw.
Okay.
It's that light that just popped up. Yes.
There?
Yes.
There again?
Mm-hmm. Yes. There again. Yes.
Now, is this light we're seeing in the far right field of view?
Yes.
So in referring to the jury's printout they have showing the left and right borders of the field of view, is this light going in and out of the field of view?
That's what it appears like to me.
Still faintly there?
Yes.
You're just barely seeing it now.
Yes.
Okay. So, Detective, that's why you wanted to ask Mr. Ledford some questions?
Yes.
And was that a car leaving Mr. Ledford's driveway?
No.
And how do you know that?
After we spoke with Mr. Matt Ledford, his answers to the questions, did you leave, did someone leave your house, were both no. So I wanted to figure out what that was, and we extensively reviewed that. And as you can see, because you've seen multiple vehicles on this video, those lights do not act or behave like any other vehicles that you see in the video. A couple of weeks later, I actually went out and did a test drive, and I pulled into Mr. Matt Ledford's driveway and backed out. And then I collected the same video surveillance. And it does not look like what you just saw. It's obviously a vehicle backing out of a driveway in my test video. So those lights, I don't know what that is.
But in a thorough investigation, you wanted to find out.
Yes.
Okay. Now, we've also heard some references, anecdotal suggestions of someone else pulling into a driveway.
Yes.
And in fact, on the morning of April 4th, there was a car pulling into a driveway.
Yes.
Was it the Daniels driveway?
It was not.
Was it the Ledford driveway?
No.
Was it the Smithson driveway?
Yes.
Okay, and do we have a video of that?
We do.
All right, and I'm going to ask Mr. Etheridge to pull that video up. And I'm going to move a clip of a car pulling into the Smithson driveway on April 4th, 2018. And again, we see camera time 2:39, but you have to add 34 minutes to that.
Add 34 minutes.
Okay.
And this driveway is going to be across the street from the Daniels residence.
The address would be 1115.
Yes. There's the vehicle. It's pulling into a driveway across the street from the Daniels, so that's why the lights flash towards you. And the vehicle is backing up now out of the driveway and driving back northbound towards Highway 70.
Did that raise suspicion in your mind, Detective?
Yes, I wanted to know who that was also.
Did you investigate?
Yes,
Who was that?
that was the,
Basis for the objection?
Basis of objection is that she would not have personal knowledge. She would have to talk to somebody, and if they have somebody who's going to say that's their vehicle, they'll have to testify.
Well,
Well, I don't understand the legal objection.
well, that's what I'm trying to determine. I think if I understand it correctly, your the basis for your objection is that she would be repeating hearsay as to who it.
Yes, Your Honor, she would not have personal knowledge that that's whose vehicle that is.
How does he know before I'm allowed to ask questions?
Well,
Well, you can lay a basis.
I think this is an anticipatory objection, but ladies and gentlemen, and sometimes to make decisions on objections, I need to hear a little bit more about it. But bear with me while I'm going to allow the district attorney to ask a question to lay a foundation about how she has any knowledge about who that might be.
Detective, when you saw this video of this car pulling into the Smithson residence, again, you've conducted lots of hours, 24 hours, just reviewing video.
Yes.
Did that make you want to go back and review more video
Yes.
from prior to April 4th?
Yes.
And did you do so?
I did.
Did you review a month's worth of video?
I did.
And did you find a similar pattern of a car pulling into the Smithson's driveway in the middle of the night on Wednesdays and Fridays?
That happens on Wednesdays and Fridays at that same address,
And did you cut
or
a-
in the same time frame.
And did you cut a clip of that video?
Yes.
All right, I'll move the clip of video from Smithson driveway as the next exhibit. We can put that on the screen.
And 123.
What are we looking at here?
This is the prior 4 Wednesdays to April the
Prior
4th.
for Wednesdays,
Yes.
1, 3/16, 3/21, 3/23, which would be a Friday,
Yes.
and 3/28.
Sorry, yes, that one's a Friday, yes.
And you combine these? And
Yes.
Let's play this video. Detective, what do we see in all 4 videos?
A vehicle pulling into the driveway of 1115 Garners Creek Road and backing out and then driving northbound towards Highway 70.
What happens on Wednesdays and Friday mornings in
Um,
Jackson County, Tennessee?
On Wednesdays and Friday mornings, newspaper, the Dixon Herald, is delivered.
And did you contact the Dixon Herald delivery man?
Yes.
And who delivers the Dixon Herald in this neighborhood?
His name is Mr. Brandon Parker.
Okay, and who runs this route with Mr. Brandon Parker?
He has family members as well that have run this route for quite some time.
And were they running this route in March of 2018?
Yes.
And were they delivering papers in March and April?
Basis for your objection.
He's got to lay a foundation, he's got to lay a non-hearsay foundation as to how she knows it. She can't just look at a video and say that's this guy or that guy's family. There has to be a foundation, a non-hearsay foundation.
Judge, we're watching them deliver papers on video. She interviewed the delivery man. They are.
Well, this witness is testifying as to the investigation that she's made as to identifying who those lights are. And what she's testifying to is that her investigation shows that that is the same time as the paper is being delivered.
Yes, sir.
So based on that, I overrule your objection. It shows basically her investigation is determining what those lights are in her opinion. That's subject to just her interpretation. It can be subject to different interpretations, but she's entitled to testify as to why she led the investigation in that direction.
And Your Honor, is the court saying that she can, based on her investigation, say who's driving that vehicle?
No. I'm just simply saying that that's why she took the steps she did to make the investigation and why, in her opinion, that's what the investigation revealed. It is not, I'm not allowing her to say that that's who that was. I'm just saying that's her investigation led her to determine that, and then it's subject to your cross-examination if you choose to about whether that's accurate or not.
And that was my point. I don't have any objection to the testimony that this is when papers were delivered. But Mr. Crouch was asking about who was driving and family members, and she simply cannot testify to that.
Well, as to that part, I'll sustain because clearly she doesn't know on each of those days who it was in particular, but clearly her investigation revealed that those lights were the result of the paper being delivered. And I think common sense would tell you that under those circumstances that that's probably what it was, but you're welcome to. All right.
Thank you. So, Detective, on the morning of April 4th, 2018, at approximately the same time,
Yes.
We see a vehicle turn into the Smithson driveway,
Yes, sir.
which is across the street from the Daniels residence.
Yes.
And we also see a vehicle during that same time frame turn into the Smithson driveway on March 16th,
Yes.
March 21st,
Yes.
March 23rd,
Yes.
March 28th.
Yes.
And from your investigation, you learned that the Dixon Herald is delivered on those days.
Yes.
And did you determine if the Smithson residents received the Dixon Herald?
Yes, they did.
Thank you. I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Mitchell?
Based off your investigation of those videos, you questioned Matthew Ledford.
Yes.
And subsequently, you contacted him to try to get his cell phone.
I did not contact him and ask him for his cell phone.
You didn't have him contact you to tell you that he wasn't going to give you the cell phone?
No, he called and left a message. He wanted to talk to me. And I think someone else had already asked him if he would provide his cell phone. And when I called him back, he just wanted to let me know that he wasn't going to provide his cell phone. But I don't believe I was the one that actually asked him for his cell phone, but someone within the team did.
Was he adamant that he wasn't going to give it over?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Mr. Crouch?
Based on your investigation, was there any reason to believe that Mr. Ledford
Objection.
committed any crimes in this case?
Objection. Call for opinion as to the ultimate issue. She can't give an opinion as to what Mr. Ledford did or didn't do.
Well, that's not what he's asking her. What he's asking her, if I understand, restate your question, if you will.
Based on your investigation, was there any evidence that Mr. Ledford committed any crimes in this case?
I think that's a legitimate question, overruled.
There was not.
Thank you.
Mr. Ledford had indicated that he thought something might be on his phone.
Objection, Your Honor. We'll ask her to read out the nature of this questioning and looking directly into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll go ahead and step out, and probably we'll go ahead and take our morning recess at this time. After I've finished with this one, you come back, we'll conclude this witness, but we'll go ahead and take a recess. You can expect it to be about 15 minutes. All right, Mr. Crouch.
My objection should have been made earlier. Mr. Mitchell elicited testimony from Detective McCartney about hearsay statements of Mr. Ledford that the score has already entered a rule on. So before that goes any further, I want to make sure both sides are clear on the non-hearsay statements of Mr. Ledford will not be allowed in to testimony.
Your Honor, General Crouch is opened the door by asking a question, was there any information or evidence that Mr. Ledford committed a crime? That opens the door for me to ask about any aspect of her investigation that would indicate that Mr. Ledford may have committed a crime or was concerned about them looking at his phone. That question opened it up wide open. If he can ask if there's any evidence or information that Mr. Ledford committed a crime, and then I can't cross in regard to that.
Well, let me suggest this. If you are arguing that you should be allowed to then ask questions regarding Mr. Ledford, number one, normally it's the attorney that starts questioning a witness or cross-examining a witness would be the same attorney who would do that. We've been kind of loose about that, but Mr. Mitchell is the one who began this cross-examination. I don't suppose there's any real reason you can't follow up on it since you're all co-counsel, but why don't you ask the questions you intend to ask in the front of the jury and let me determine whether or not they're meet what you're saying would be evidence of some that contradicts what she just said. So.
Was Mr. Ledford confronted with the statement that y'all had done a video study that showed his
I went.
Your Honor, the form of the question first, the study doesn't show, and that wasn't her testimony, that a vehicle left his driveway at 5 in the morning. So, and that's what I'm talking about. If he's going to phrase the questions in a suggestive way so the jury can hear that, that's wrong.
Your Honor, this is out of jury. I mean, if he wants to object to out of jury.
Now out of the jury's presence.
Well, what I think we're trying to do is to determine what's a permissible question to ask in front of the jury to avoid impermissible questions being asked while they're here. So restate your question. Make sure that your question is not going to be something that can be containing information that the jury should not hear. But let's first of all ask the question you want to, and let me, Mr. Christ, let me hear the question so I can determine whether it is or is not objectionable.
All right, I'm not saying that it was Mr. Ledford's vehicle that left, but was he confronted by you and other law enforcement and told that a video study showed his vehicle leaving around 5 in the morning?
No.
You're saying no one told him that?
No one told him that his vehicle left his driveway.
Not his vehicle, a vehicle.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you just said his vehicle.
Was he confronted with law enforcement who told him that a video study had been done and a vehicle was seen leaving his driveway around 5 in the morning?
When I went to Mr. Ledford's house with Sergeant Trevor Daniel, we did discuss lights in the area of his driveway. I cannot remember whether or not we said a vehicle actually left his driveway.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Show this transcript
Yes, sir.
of that recorded interview. If you would read that page to refresh your memory, please.
Being flown in kind
No,
of...
I mean just to yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was Mr. Ledford in fact confronted with a statement that a video study showed a vehicle leaving his driveway around 5 in the morning?
No, sir.
No?
No.
What was said?
That lights come on and go south.
And when he was going through the footage from the night on April the 3rd at 10 o'clock, a vehicle pulls in your driveway and the lights go out. the headlights go out. At 5, Detective McCartney, yeah, about 5 something, a little after 5 or around 5, after in the morning, the lights come back on and they back and you can see them. They'll go back down south.
Okay.
So y'all told him you see a vehicle come in his drive and you see the lights go out.
Yes.
And then you say, and yeah, about 5, a little after 5, around 5, the lights come on. You're referring to his vehicle or a vehicle.
Can I see that again?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Okay, yes, sir. Sergeant Trevor Daniel did say the lights come on and they go back. The lights come on and they back, and you can see them. They go back down south.
So it's talking about a vehicle.
Yes.
It's talking about a vehicle leaving his drive around 5 and going south.
We did think it could be a possibility, and that's why we wanted to investigate it further.
And I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you, was Mr. Ledford confronted with the statement that we saw a vehicle come in your drive at 10, we saw the lights come back on, and the vehicle leave around 5 and then go south?
The statement was that we saw the lights come on, back, and go back down south. Yes, that he was confronted with that statement, yes.
And you're talking about a vehicle, not a person running down the road with lights.
No, not at that time. We weren't talking about that. We were talking about a vehicle, yes.
Okay. And did you further, at some point, was he confronted with a request for his phone to determine the location of his phone during this time period?
At some point, yes, he was.
All right. And did he indicate that he would provide that phone?
I don't know what his answer was to that initial questioning.
But in any event, he told you that he was not going to provide that phone.
He did.
And he was adamant about that.
Yes.
That's it, Your Honor.
Judge, I have no problems with those questions, but none of that suggests that Mr. Ledford committed any kind of crime. And that's the issue. Mr. Lockard, and the reason we had the pretrial issue hearing on this issue was we've all been there and done that. So as long as he doesn't get into suggesting that
You can ask those limited questions based on that fact. I'm not sure how that is suggestive of the fact that the investigation, it contradicts what she said about his, but that's something you can argue to the jury. I will allow the questions that you have just put before this witness when we return.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Now, while we have the jury out of the room and before we take our break, let me tell you that I've been handed 2 additional questions. First question is these are from the jury. Did Detectives Lovell and McCartney ever follow up with the unidentified male on page 41 and report to the supervisor that a follow-up may be needed? That's question 1. Question 2 is, did the Detectives Lovell and McCartney follow up on the brown vehicle, page 26, line 16? Those appear to me to be questions the jury requests. Anybody have any objection to those questions being asked, and does either side wish to ask those questions?
May we confer just a moment?
Certainly. Yeah. Did the Detectives Lovell and McCartney follow up on the brown vehicle, page 26, line 16? What that says is, Detective Lovell, do you see that brown vehicle in the "we'll check when we come back"? And Joe Daniels says inaudible. And that was basically it. The other question is on page 41. and it has to do with the unidentified male on page 41. The guy saw him at 1 o'clock in the morning standing up here by the road. I take that as Mr. McCormick. I think that just is a clarification as to who the unidentified male is not Mr. McCormick. It is someone identifying Mr. McCormick. I'm assuming that it's another investigator on the scene. Am I correct? So both of those, I think, can be clarified easily when we return from our break. So.
I think they'll probably be clarified by further proof. My anticipation.
The question on page 41, Will,
Yeah.
I would need to ask Detective McCartney.
Well,
He knew that out of jury.
do you know who that was, that the unidentified male on page 41 that identified Mr. McCormick to you?
Oh, on page 41, that's THP Trooper Ajee. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly.
And he was just simply identifying Mr. McCormick to you as someone that might have seen something?
Yes.
On page 26, the brown vehicle, do you know anything about that?
I don't know. I don't know anything further about it.
All right. Then I think those questions can legitimately be asked and I will ask them if that suits everyone when we return. Sure.
I'm just trying to get straight in my mind, was the brown vehicle, was that the loggers? Do you recall?
It's on page 26.
I'm just trying to determine if that's what the jury's wanting to know.
It doesn't appear to be. From what I'm reading in my memory, I think we're driving by all of the command post area at that time.
Okay.
So we could have been talking about a new resource that had shown up. Lots of vehicles were starting to park there with the command posts. I don't know.
I can't.
Well, the question is, did you ever follow up? And it's just a yes or no question.
Not to my knowledge.
All right. I think it's just a question they're asking if that was something that became significant enough to follow up. She can answer whether she did or she didn't. And then y'all can ask her any other questions you want to after that. But I think those two questions are legitimate, and I will ask those when the jury comes back from break. All right. Then let's take a 15-minute recess, and we'll be in recess until that time. So.
All rise.
Recording stopped.
Court is in recess.
Y'all haven't seen a phone with a pink case, have you? I cannot find my phone.
Yeah. As compared to.
I found it. Found it. It's under the boxes.
Meditation.